Hey guys, how's it going? It's me, Josh Halter, owner and founder of The Bldg. I'm actually here at my store, The Bldg Houston. You can come visit me and my shop here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Saturdays 10 to 2. So I'm actually going to go over a little bit about the basics of bioactive substrate today and essentially what you can expect and what Bldg has to offer. But before I do that, I'm just going to be giving some of my little ones a treat here. So these guys, you guys have seen my emeralds. If you've come here, you've met my emeralds. I'm one of the few people in the States here that's actually captive breeding them and have been providing multiple different lines here to many different people here in the United States. And let me tell you, this is one of the most rewarding species to work with. Come here. You can't keep stealing them. No, you can't keep stealing them. Come here. Here. Here, you want it? Oh my goodness, they're just like, wait, I want it. Here. Here. There you go. So what I'm giving them right now are waxworms. So waxworms are like chocolate for reptiles. That's how I like to look at it. It's a very fattening food source. Oh, one of my girls is up here in the tree. Now, we found 3 babies in here about 2 days ago. And they're doing great. So I'm just making sure that, that my girls and my guys have all the stuff that they need to be successful. They just ripped it right out of his mouth. If you come over here, Christina, you can actually see one of my girls up here in the tree. Here, baby. There you go. So, pretty exciting, but I thought you guys would appreciate that before we get into, the little bit about the basics of bioactive. So I did a video like this in 2017. It was one of the very first videos that I released under the Bldg brand. But I think it's time for a refresher just because so much has changed. My brand's changed for better. We have a lot of stuff going on. So you guys know I have built my business around my dirt empire. Not only has my brand honestly really jump-started major other brands to start selling bioactive stuff, it's becoming a standard of care, which is our mission statement from the very beginning. So it's really great to be able to be, in my opinion, to have a part in that. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go briefly go over some of the different drainage layers that I have to offer, as well as some of the different soils, how they work, and what you can expect over time with different types of cleanup crew, as well as your different types of fungal and bacterial processes. So first, I'm going to go arid down. So I'm going to start with one of the most popular mixes that I sell. This is my Terra Sahara. So this substrate took me years and years to perfect. It's pretty dense, it's pretty heavy. It is for any arid biome, so animals like leopard geckos, ocellated skinks, uromastyx, bearded dragons. Arid critters like that thrive on the Terra Sahara. So the Terra Sahara is going to stay dry at the top and moist in the middle and bottom layers. So the best thing about it, though, is it retains all tunnels and burrows. So you guys know, if you guys remember this Ackies monitor build, my girl has been laying eggs. And they have an entire network of tunnels through here. But I want you to see down here. Look at this. This is almost 1 inch to 2 inches high of just a straight tunnel. So this is the bottom of a tunnel system. This is another end of a tunnel system here. So these guys have made an extensive system because the Sahara is able to maintain all of those necessary tunnels and burrows that your reptiles make. And that's extremely important when you're keeping desert reptiles, because a lot of times they get their humidity, they rehydrate from burrowing into the ground where there is a little bit more of water available to them. So with the Terra Sahara, we always recommend making sure that you have at least a 2.5 to 3 inch layer. Again, dry on the top, moist in the middle and bottom layers. That is how the Sahara and the Firma function. because it's not about raising the humidity in the actual biome when it comes to the Sahara. It's about maintaining it low, but giving your animals opportunity zones to rehydrate, fresh shed, and respiration. Shedding, respiration, hydration, one of the three most important aspects of reptile keeping. Then we have my Terra Firma. So much like the Terra Sahara, it does retain all tunnels and burrows. Now this isn't as dense, but it's still pretty heavy. And this is my 36 quart bag. So like all the substrates, we offer them in 6 and 36 quart. So like all my substrates, they're all handmade in-house. We manually put our ingredients together, we mix them, we bag them, and we check them to make sure that there's no nasties or anything in here. So that's one thing that Bldg will always have, is the handcrafted aspect to our brand. So the Firma will maintain all tunnels and burrows, but what the Firma is going to do differently from the Sahara is that it's going to aerate. It's going to aerate slightly more effectively because it's a little bit more chunkier. So essentially what's going to happen is it's going to put a little bit more humidity up into the tank itself, whereas the Sahara is going to hold a little bit more humidity into the actual underlayers of the substrate. So this substrate is great for ball pythons, corn snakes, you know, a lot of different stuff. So one way that we like to use the Firma is when we are dealing with animals that like trees. So we know that there's a lot of reptiles that need to have trees in their enclosure if you want to keep them right. But trees need a lot of soil, they need a lot of nutrition, and you need to make sure that you are providing enough surface area for the tree to actually grow. So this is a good example. This is, you guys saw the emerald enclosure. So right in here, this is an 8.5-inch layer of Terra Firma. So we actually put a very minor drainage layer down here. This is my super grow. Now, you normally don't need a drainage layer with the Terra Firma, but I use the drainage layer in this enclosure because we are using a tree. When you're keeping trees, keeping shrubs, they need a lot of water. So you don't want to oversaturate your soil because then you can get gnats, you can get bad bacteria, all that fun stuff. So the Super Grow really helps maintain, make sure we don't get waterlogged, but then you can see all the different fungal and biological processes going on in this tank. So in this tank we have springtails, isopods, millipedes, earwigs, and as well as my BioShot, all functioning together with symbiotic relationships to continually create positivity for your soil. So, but the Firma can also be used without the drainage layer, as you can see right over here. I'm sure you guys remember this build. I posted this about a year ago. Guys, this is the exact same tank, exact same dirt. This dirt I've had since when I bought Nagini for my wife. So you can see Fierce, and Fierce is actually shedding right now. But you can see the Firma, see it's dry on the top, and then the middle and bottom layers have a little bit more of a moisture, a little bit higher of a moisture content to them. And, you know, this substrate has been held on now for close to 10 years. Not kidding, guys, 10 years. All we do is put a little bit of a top off, as well as enrich it with a little bit more biodegradables every once in a while. Next, we go to our tropical setup. So, you guys know I have two different tropical substrates. We have Terra Fauna and Terra Flora. So there are also really good other commercial options out there for you, which I'll cover in a bit. But what I first want to cover is the difference between the two. So you notice how the Terra Fauna has a picture of a crested gecko on it. And the Terra Flora, this actually has a waxy monkey tree frog on it. And I picked that because they're one of my favorite frogs, but honestly, I should have went with the dart frog on the front of it, but it's okay. So the Terra Fauna is, while it has two similar ingredients of the Terra Flora, it also has a lot of different ingredients in it to essentially hold a lot more humidity. So when you're looking at a Terra Fauna biome, you're dealing with animals that are tropical. But tropical in the aspect that there's humidity spikes that go high in the day and then go down. up and down, up and down. So animals like crested geckos, gargoyle geckos, just as a quick example, they like to have humidity spikes throughout the day. They don't like constant humidity. It'll give them fungal, bacterial infections. They need that. It can cause respiratory problems. So the fauna is going to drain effectively into your drainage layer, which is either your HydroGrow version 1 or version 2. And then essentially what's going to happen is with how well it aerates, okay, it still holds a lot more humidity than the Flora. So it's constantly putting those humidity pockets back up into your soil to give you varying humidity spikes throughout the day. So the whole point of bio is to make your job easier as a keeper. So the fauna is essentially going to make sure that it stays at the right acidity and all that other stuff while giving your biome those fluctuations that it needs. Then you have your flora. So your Terra Flora is mainly meant for the forest floor tropical critters. So I really want you guys to think, when you're walking, and have you ever been to a rainforest before, the floor is wet. It is sopping wet. So the point of what I'm trying to make is that soil needs to be able to stay wet, but not stagnate, break down, and last longer than a couple months to a couple years. That's where I designed the Flora. So the Flora isn't like anything else on the market. It is a completely dirt-based substrate. A lot of your substrates, when it comes with dart frogs and other things like this, is your typical ABG mix. That's your orchid bark, your sphagnum moss, your charcoal, your tree fern fiber, and your peat moss. You know, that is a very, and there's nothing wrong, ABG works great, but it's very clunky. So over time, those ingredients just essentially break down, and then all you have left are big clunky ingredients like this for your soil. So for me, that was one thing I wanted to troubleshoot when I designed the Flora. So essentially, the Flora is going to maintain the perfect amount of moisture. It's just going to stay wet, but it's going to keep that clunkiness similar to the ABG mix. But it is going to pass water directly through it. I want you guys to think of the Flora as almost the strainer. It's a strainer medium that retains enough surface area that doesn't break down near as quick as ABG, but in hindsight was going to promote positive bacterial growth, positive fungal growth to form symbiotic relationships with your plant roots, as well as function cohesively with your drainage layer. And that's what's most important. So when you're running things like straight cocoa coir or whatever, it's just going to absorb, get super hygroscopic, get super acidic, and then it can just completely cause your terrarium to crash. So when you are utilizing the fauna and flora, I highly recommend that you utilize a drainage layer. So you can see right here with my dumpy enclosure, you can see that we actually have a pretty decent layer of Terra Fauna right here with my version 1 of my HydroGrow right here. So we did a deep layer of the HydroGrow and then the fauna. As you can see, the fauna it does look a little clunky. So essentially what we're doing is we're making sure that it is aerating top to bottom all the way through here to prevent stagnation. And now that's what's most important, guys, when you're maintaining your soil, is that the water content's right, it's aerating appropriately, and that you are reinforcing the symbiotic relationships and bacterial processes that your animals need to function. So there's two different types of drainage layers. So this is your most common drainage layer that you're going to see. This is just, guys, this is hydroponic clay balls. You know, we sell it in the 6-quart and 36-quart size. Now, this drainage layer, this creates an uneven surface on the top. So you have to use a screen on the top before you put your substrate on, okay? The second one is my very first version of my HydroGrow. This is the bee's knees. You can culture springtails on this stuff. You can rinse it and keep dart frogs on it. I actually have an in situ enclosure at my house that it is substrateless. The only substrate I'm using is this right here. And it's really great because it's calcium rich, which really helps with some of your other aspects of maintaining your substrate. So essentially it goes your drainage layer. If you want to use the screen for HydroGrow version 1, you can, but you don't need it because it creates an even top layer, which makes it really, really easy for the consumer to utilize. As you can see over here, I did a little bit of a mixture with my Last of Us mossarium, and you guys remember this video? This is taken off. I love how it looks. It just looks great. But you can see we used the leca here at the base, and then I used a little bit of turfus. Now I want you guys to be able to see with the HydroGrow version 2. You notice where the HydroGrow version 2 is, and then you notice how all the plant roots are immediately going into it. Whereas if you go over here, you're not seeing plant roots go into it where the rocks are. That's partially because of the high calcium content that is in the HydroGrow version 1, which makes it such a good drainage layer medium. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So the last but not least is my Terra Aranea. So this substrate I specifically designed for invertebrates. So I have a lot of people ask me, well, what biomes is it good for? I have had everybody have success with this, with all of their, from Goliath bird eaters to curly hair tarantulas to golden scorpions. We've had everybody have great success with this. It retains all tunnels and burrows, but it's not dusty. So that's the most important part. It's not dusty, and it doesn't get a bad pH as long as you maintain it appropriately. So if you're deciding to build a tank for like a Goliath bird eater, you know, that has high humidity, I highly recommend you utilize the Supergrow. Because when you're dealing with a spider that big, you need deep substrate. You have deep substrate, guess what? You're going to need big plants that have an extensive root system. Well, how do you maintain those plants with that extensive root system? You make sure that the water content of your soil stays right. I do not recommend using the Aranea for anything other than tarantulas or invertebrates because some of the pieces can be slightly clunkier, as well as making sure that those tea and other invertebrate keepers have to make very specific changes with their husbandry with when it comes to making sure that their Aranea functions properly. So it can be a little bit harder to give those boosts and up and down with the humidity and all those other things like we were talking about when utilizing like in place of some of these other substrates. So a lot of people like to think that, you know, we can just put some dirt together and it's fine. If you guys, all I want are people just to keep reptiles this way. If you don't go through me, that's fine. If you go through a competitor, that's fine too. Or if you do it yourself, that's fine too. Just make sure that you do your research and do it right because a bad soil mixture can kill your animal. Hear it from BioDude. Bad soil mixtures can kill your animal because it's not just about putting stuff in. You can have bad bacteria buildup. You can have a byproduct, the sulfur dioxide or methane buildup if there's not enough airflow. Tons of stuff can happen. So over the life of your bioactive terrarium, you need to have fuel. So essentially how this process works is your different funguses and bacterias and your cleanup crew break down organic matter. Now organic matter can be shed, feces, twigs, wood, whatever. And as they break down your organic matter, it turns it into a viable resource that can be used by your plant roots, your different fungal and bacterial strains to put nutrients back into your soil. So if you guys don't know this, the most alive organism on the planet that has the most stuff in it is dirt. Believe that. So over time, you need to really make sure that as your terrarium loses some of those essential elements that you might have to put them back in. So when you are utilizing isopods, when you're utilizing springtails, or utilizing millipedes, or utilizing earwigs, or whatever cleanup crews that you guys want to use, it's really important that you are providing enough biodegradables and biomass for those animals to maintain their population, as well as making sure that your soil has enough fuel to drive the car. Make sense? So I want to show you guys some. I'm gonna show you guys some stuff. So you guys are all familiar with my BioShot, okay? So the BioShot is essentially going to put in your archaea and your endo and ecto mycorrhizal strains. So essentially, big fancy words. All that does is it gives your plant roots the ability to not be shocked as quick when they're putting into the tank. Number two, it helps it helps reinforce symbiotic relationships. You guys don't know what a symbiotic relationship is. That's when one organism utilizes another organism for a mutually beneficial effect. So a symbiotic relationship, for example, is the fish that attach the sharks. And their fish are attached to the shark as the shark's swimming around. So the fish is eating the parasites off the shark. The fish is getting fed and the shark is getting benefits of not having parasites on it. Symbiotic relationship. It is no different with the BioShot, with using the different strains of bacteria and funguses to work with the bugs, to break down organic matter, to put that matter back into your soil, so that way everything is happy, healthy, chipper. But over time, your tank can lose vital things. When I say vital things, it can lose things like calcium, it can lose things like potassium. You know, all these necessary elements that drive these relationships, that maintain soil health, can eventually be depleted and not put back in. So one of the things that I like to add in every couple months is straight calcium. So this is the BioDude Soil Cal Plus. And essentially, you literally take a small sprinkle and you mix it into your substrate. What that's going to do, it is going to provide calcium for some of your larger plants, such as your trees, which helps create stronger bones for the tree. Number two, it will provide food for your isopods and your millipedes and your springtails. And it's as easy as a sprinkle, mix, done. Or if you're trying to do the whole kit and caboodle, about 6 months after your tank is set up, we also use the BioVive. So now the BioVive is a lot more in depth. This is probably one of my top selling soil inoculants. So you don't even have to use my bioactive soil to use the BioVive. You can put it in almost any bioactive soil, as long as the soil is right and functions appropriately for the environment that you're trying to replicate. So essentially what the BioVive is going to do, it is going to put all those lost elements that your springtails, your isopods, your millipedes, and even your plants take from the soil. So if you're taking from something, you really need to make sure that we're replenishing it back in. Because just because the soil can last the life of the animal doesn't mean that it's good soil. You still have to do your part as a keeper to make sure that you're giving your soil the best chance for long-term success. Hence why I have tanks that have been going on for over almost 10 years. So as far as cleanup crew is concerned, so here's one of my masters. So this enclosure has Terra Firma in it, okay? So in here, these are my powder blues. So we have a good amount of them in here. You can also see some springtails, and now we're going to lift up this moss. Yeah. Look at all this. We got all life stages in here. Now you can see the amount of biomass in here. We have leaf litter. We have cork bark. We have sphagnum moss. As you can see, I put a little bit of charcoal in here on the top, likely from the springtail culture that we put in here. Whenever I make isopod masters, I always put a small BioDude springtail culture in there to continually help aerate the soil. Not saying you guys have to do that. That's just something I like to do. But overall, this is just one of the many masters that we have here that is flourishing on the BioDude substrate. So when you put in your isopods, it's very important that, again, you make sure that there's enough biomass in there, especially your larger species. The larger the species, the more fuel they need to maintain. Smaller species may not need as much, but they might breed a lot. They might breed a little bit faster, so you still want to make sure you have enough surface area for them to break things down. Next, we have a springtail culture. So there's a couple different ways you can culture springtails. This culture is 30 days old. So as you can see here, this is what we like to call our arids. So we have a ton of them in here. So I highly recommend you must have the springtails and isopods in here to work in conjunction with your fungal and bacterial inoculants. I do not recommend only using the fungal and bacterial inoculants because it'll be okay, I guess, but you want everything to work together. You want everything to go that full circle. And it's a little bit harder to do that when you're not using one or only using the other. Now, another exciting cleanup crew that I would like to show you guys that not as many people use, millipedes. So these are called Florida ivory millipedes. So these are large millipedes. So millipedes of this size, you got to be careful. So you can see we got some springtails established on here. Okay, and then you also have to be careful depending on the species of some of the juice that they'll emit. So you can see a big piece of calcium bone right here. Okay, so again, not only do we mix in the BioDude Soil Cal Plus, we also give them a straight calcium bone. Now, as you can see, these millipedes right here, these guys are really cool. You can look at all the legs underneath. And it's as simple as I recommend getting a much smaller species, but I went for size so that way you guys could physically see what I'm talking about. But it's as simple as putting a couple millipedes in here, and they will just take off and breed. And so as far as maintaining some of these enclosures is concerned, all of my enclosures have different types of cleanup crews in them. And all of them you can see the different microbiological processes that are happening within the soil, like right in front of you. And that's something that to me is extremely important. So if you can physically see that in front of you, that means that your soil is healthy, thriving, and doing a good job. I mean, my emeralds are a prime example. I've had this group now for years and years and years. We are having eggs being self-incubated in this enclosure. We are finding babies that just pop up. Let me tell you, there are a few better feelings than coming in the morning and finding a bunch of baby reptiles in your enclosure. It freaking rules. But I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of a brief overview about bioactivity. You can achieve a self-maintaining, you can achieve a self-cleaning ecosystem. That doesn't mean that you can just sit back and not do anything, but it can streamline your day and what you have to do as far as husbandry is concerned when it comes to your animals. Just make sure you do your research. Make sure you have a full understanding of the husbandry needs of your animal, and make sure that once your tank is set up, it's recommended to let it cycle for at least 30 days to give your bugs and all of your bacterial and fungal processes a chance to establish. You guys have seen me put animals in there right away. I'm pretty darn impatient. That's also just because I have a ton of springtails, I have a ton of isopods, so I dump a whole ton in there so that way I can just get it going. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop a line in the comment, and I really appreciate everybody's support and allowing me to, continue to live my dream every day. Again, my name is Josh Halter. I am the owner and founder of the BioDude. Please subscribe on YouTube. Visit me on Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to come by the shop, the Bldg Houston here, to come meet these beautiful little emerald tree skinks. Dude abides.